For 23 years Martha had cleaned the same marble floors in the same grand house on Willow Creek Drive. Her hands knew every corner of that mansion the way a pianist knows their favorite song. She arrived each morning at 6 and left each evening at 5 carrying her worn leather purse and whatever kindness Mr. Harrison had offered that day. Robert Harrison had inherited his fortune the way some people inherit their grandmother's china. It simply appeared one day after his father passed and suddenly he owned more than he could ever spend. The house had 12 bedrooms though he lived alone. The kitchen could feed 50 though he usually ate standing up over the sink. But Martha made that enormous empty house feel like something close to a home. She hummed while she worked. Old hymns mostly from her childhood in Alabama. Robert would sometimes pause at the top of the stairs just to listen. There was something about her voice that made the marble and crystal seem less cold. Made the silence less heavy. He paid her well, better than fair, but lately he had noticed things. Small things that added up to a picture he couldn't ignore. Her shoes had holes worn through the soles. He saw them one day when she knelt to scrub the baseboards. She tried to cover them quickly but he had already seen. Her coat was thin. Too thin for November. She would shiver slightly when she first arrived each morning. The kind of shiver that comes from waiting at a bus stop in the dark. And there were the phone calls. Whispered conversations in the laundry room when she thought no one could hear. Words like hospital bills and overdue notices and please just one more week. Robert had wanted to ask. Had wanted to simply write a check and solve whatever needed solving. But Martha had her dignity. He could see it in the way she carried herself. In the way she insisted on earning every dollar. Some people you could simply give money to and others needed to keep their pride intact. So he decided to follow her instead. It wasn't something he planned exactly. One evening he simply told her goodnight as usual and then went to his car. Waited at the corner. Watched as she walked to the bus stop 3 blocks away because the closer stop had been discontinued. The bus took 40 minutes winding through neighborhoods that grew smaller and more tired with each mile. Martha sat near the front with her purse held close. Robert followed in his Mercedes keeping several cars back. She got off at a corner where streetlights flickered and went dark and flickered again. The sidewalk was cracked and buckled from tree roots no one had bothered to fix. She walked 4 more blocks. Past houses with bars on windows and chain-link fences and yards full of toys no one had energy to put away. She stopped at a small house painted pale yellow. Or it had been yellow once. Now it was mostly gray with exhaustion. The porch sagged on one side like an old man favoring a bad hip. Robert parked down the street. Watched as lights came on inside. He sat there as the evening grew darker. Sat there as stars appeared between gaps in the clouds. He told himself he should leave. This was private. This was her life away from marble floors and crystal chandeliers. What right did he have to intrude? But something kept him there. Through the window he could see Martha moving around inside. She had changed from her work clothes into a faded house dress. And then he saw why she whispered on those phone calls. Why her shoes had holes and her coat was thin. 3 children appeared. Not young children. Teenagers. 1 girl and 2 boys. They moved around Martha like satellites around the sun. Drawn to her warmth. Her steadiness. And then an older woman appeared. Bent with age and illness. Moving slowly with a walker. Martha's mother Robert guessed. Maybe 80 or more. Martha helped her to a chair with such gentleness. Such patience. The meal they ate was simple. Robert could see through the window. Rice and beans and something that might have been chicken. Stretched far enough to feed 5 people. Martha served everyone else first. Took the smallest portion for herself. After dinner the children did homework at a table barely big enough for 3. Martha helped each one. Moving between them. Pointing at textbooks. Explaining with endless patience. The older woman sat nearby wrapped in blankets watching with eyes that held their own kind of wealth. Later Martha helped her mother to bed. He could see them through another window. The careful way she lifted frail limbs. The tender way she pulled up blankets. The kiss on the forehead that lingered. Then she returned to the kitchen. Washed dishes in a sink that was old enough to have witnessed decades of the same routine. Wiped down counters. Swept the floor. And then she sat. Just sat at that small table with her head in her hands. Her shoulders curved inward. And Robert saw them shake. She was crying. Silently. The way people cry when they can't afford to let anyone hear. When showing weakness might shatter whatever faith others have placed in them. Robert felt something break open in his chest. Something that had been locked away behind money and marble and the kind of loneliness that comes from having everything except what matters. Here was a woman who cleaned his mansion for 12 hours and then came home to care for 3 children and an elderly mother. Who stretched beans and rice to feed 5 mouths. Who gave away her warmth until nothing was left for herself. Who cried only when she thought no one could see. He had never felt smaller. Never felt his wealth mean less. What good were 12 empty bedrooms when Martha didn't have one peaceful room of her own? What good were crystal chandeliers when her children did homework by the dim glow of discount bulbs? Robert sat in his car with tears on his face. 58 years old and crying in the dark on a street where no one knew his name or his bank account. Where none of that mattered at all. He drove home slowly. The mansion seemed more hollow than ever. More ridiculous in its excess. He walked through rooms Martha had cleaned that day. Saw them with different eyes. Every polished surface was her tired hands. Every pristine corner was her aching back. Every gleaming window was time she could have spent with those children. With her mother. That night Robert didn't sleep. He sat in his study with a pen and paper. Thinking, planning, trying to find a way to help that wouldn't wound her dignity. Wouldn't make her feel like charity. In the morning he made phone calls. To his lawyer, to his accountant, to people who could make things happen quickly and quietly. When Martha arrived at 6 he was waiting in the kitchen. She looked surprised. He was never up this early. I need to talk with you, he said. Please sit down. Her face went carefully neutral. The expression people wear when they think bad news is coming. When they're already bracing for impact. Martha, you've worked for me for 23 years. You've been more than an employee. You've been the heartbeat of this house. The only thing that makes it feel like more than just a building. She nodded slowly, unsure where this was going. I'm getting older. I need to think about what happens to everything I have. And I've decided to make some changes. He slid papers across the table. Her hands trembled as she picked them up. The house on Maple Street is yours now. Paid in full. I've also set up accounts for your grandchildren's education. And there's a trust for your mother's medical care. Everything she needs. No more bills. No more worries about how to pay. Martha's mouth opened but no sound came out. And I'm increasing your salary. Significantly. Not because you'll work more but because you should have been paid this all along. She was crying now. Really crying. Not the silent tears from last night but deep sobs that shook her whole body. Why, she finally managed to say. Why would you do this? Because I followed you home yesterday. I saw your life, your family, how hard you work, how much you give, and I realized something. I've been living in a museum, surrounded by expensive things that don't matter at all, while you've been living in a home, building something real, raising children, caring for your mother, making every dollar stretch, every moment count. He had to stop. His own voice was breaking. You've taught me more about what matters than anyone in my whole life. And you did it without saying a word. Just by being who you are. By showing up every day with kindness and grace even when you had every reason to be bitter. To be angry at how unfair everything is. Martha reached across the table. Took his hand. Hers was rough from decades of cleaning. His was soft from decades of doing nothing useful. But in that moment they held each other like two people who had finally found solid ground. Mr. Harrison, she said quietly. Robert. All these years I prayed for a miracle. Prayed for something to change. Some way to give my babies and my mama what they deserve. And here you are. An answer I never saw coming. They sat there together as morning light filled the kitchen. Two people from completely different worlds who had somehow found their way to the same table. The same understanding. Robert didn't feel like a billionaire in that moment. Didn't feel superior or powerful or any of the things money was supposed to make him feel. He just felt human, connected, part of something larger than himself. And it was the richest he had ever been. In the months that followed, the changes rippled outward like stones dropped in still water. Martha's grandchildren thrived with the weight of worry lifted. Her mother received the care she needed. The small yellow house was repaired and painted. A real yellow this time. Bright and hopeful. And Robert learned that following someone home had been the first step toward finding his own way. toward understanding that wealth without purpose is just numbers on paper. But wealth used to lift others up becomes something that transforms everyone it touches. He and Martha remained what they had always been. Employer and employee, but also something more now. Two souls who had witnessed each other's truth. Who had chosen kindness when they could have chosen distance. And if you had asked Robert what he was most proud of in his life, he would not mention the business deals or the investments or the fortune he inherited. He would tell you about the day he followed an old woman home and learned what it really means to be rich.